Design change number 482-B-C. What I meant by that was when I did the math, making the frames, the horizontal frames, out of dimensional lumber was going to be about $100 or more. This is 4x8 sheet of plywood. I ripped it in half in the store so I can get it in my SUV. Is enough to rip out all of the material I need for the frames, and it was $69. Here's a cutlass drawing of what the cuts are going to be. And you can see it's all 3-inch cuts. I'll have leftover stock if I make mistakes, which we all do. Here's what one of the frames looks like. This is a horizontal long frame, the large frame that goes from side to side, you know, for top and bottom of each cabinet. This is one of the small frames that goes into the lower cabinet. There's also a bunch of small frames that go for the drawers on either side of the open armoire kind of part. So what I need to do now is take this to the table saw and just rip out 3-inch pieces, 3-inch wide pieces. Just the boring ripping of the wood part. You know how it is when you sit there, you get the table saw and you're just tearing stuff through it just to get your part. So let's go ahead and cut some wood. I may or may not put that on a time lapse, but because you've all seen everybody on YouTube cut plywood on a table saw. Because of the length and the weight, of course, I've got an in-feed, out-feed roller here, so I can just take the piece and bring it back onto the roller and then scoot it over to my fence and then carefully guide it through the table saw. So I think the blade has to come up a little more. There we go. Let's rip some wood. Plywood sound. There you go, all cut out. They moved a little bit when I cut them out, so I've stacked them. I'm going to put a weight on here, just let them sit here and equilibrate. So there's going to be a few days between this segment and the next segment, but you won't know that because it'll be blinking you're there. The next trick or thing to do is clean off the bench so I can use the chop saw to cut all the pieces to the correct length, exactly the same. So I can put stop blocks on my bench. And these are going to be 52 long, the long ones, so they'll all be 52. The short ones will be 13 1/4. They're all going to be 13 1/4 for the long ones, the big dividers. Small dividers, same thing, going to get the sizes correct. Some may ask, how come you're building the frames first? Why'd you build the case first? Well, you can do it either way. You can build the frames first and make sure they're absolutely the same length and width, perfectly same depth and width. And then your sides are going to be just fine. Or you can build the casement first, the casework first, and then build your frames to the case. But I want to do it this way. The drawers will have to be a little bit more fiddly. So next segment, I know, why am I even saying that? It's going to be cut to the next piece. But let's let these sit and then we'll come back and I'll demonstrate setting everything up and cutting them all to length. And then it's pocket hole time. Before I get started cross-cutting these 3-inch wide pieces of plywood, lesson learned. I had them rip the plywood down the middle at 24 inches to get it in my car, my SUV. What I should have done is have measured up, counted up 3-inch increments plus saw kerf and had it cut at a point where I was going to cut, I would have ripped it anyway. As a result, I came up short one of the long pieces, which is no big deal. It's only going to be a few parts that I need to make for another piece of plywood, small piece of plywood. And how we're going to do this is I made a stop block with a quick clamp, and basically it goes up against the bench and you clamp it and it's down nice and rigid and solid. I specifically made these benches with an overhang lip on at the outside so I can clamp to them very easily. So that's basically how I'm going to do it. Eventually, I'm going to replace the temporary stop block I've got there with T-track running down just at the fence all the way down either side, so I can have movable stop blocks of varieties of types with fine adjustments and all that I can just put in the T-track and put in place and then do all my cuts that way. So let's get on to how I'm going to do it, and then we'll do some. You can all see how this is going to work. This will clamp up to the space where I want it. I actually marked it here for expediency in this demonstration, the distance from the blade. But from there, I take this little Blaze laser measuring device, which takes into account the length of the tool. I've got the blade locked down at the bottom position, the packed position, and I turn this on and hit the laser, take a measurement, and I've got 4 feet, 4 inches, 4 1/16 inches. That's pretty accurate. When I do a test measurement with just to double check my measurements, yeah, 52 on the nose. So what I'm going to do is cut some out and then just finish cutting them all out, and you'll see them finally finished and stacked over there. So I've got my cut list, which has how the cuts are coming out of the wood. And this time I printed out how much of each piece I need, because that's part of the cut list process. So let's get busy doing some cuts, and then we'll see a stack of finished parts. Well, I was able to get all of the pieces out of, even though I thought I'd miscalculated, and it got all the pieces out of that one sheet of plywood with just a few little scraps left. Lucky me. So there's 8 of these long ones. There's 4 of the 25-inch ones. There is 24 of the 19-inch ones and 18 of the 13-inch ones. The next thing to do is to start cutting some freaking pocket holes. Now, pocket holes. I've got dados running down a couple of these, so the pocket holes are going to have to be right on the close to the sides, so I can run the dado head through there without issue. So let me set up for that and start cutting the pocket holes. Ready to go to make some pocket holes. Here's the stack of wood I'm going to make the pocket holes, marked at each end for where they're going to get the pocket holes. The armor jig is held down. If you saw my earlier video, I've got these dial magnets that hold it on the table saw. I set it up with a piece of scrap from the piece of plywood, which in turn sets the collar depth, which is cool. So that's all ready to go. From one hole to the other, the inside is 3/4 of an inch. I want a little bit more than that because I'm going to dado some of these in the middle, and I don't know which ones are going to get dados. I've hooked up dust collection to the little CNC dust collector I have. I might move it closer. Problem is that the Rockler fitting doesn't work very well on this dust collection port, so I put on another port that I can slide this rubber piece in and kind of jam it in place, and it seems to be holding. So I'll move it a little closer to get tension off of it. There we go. Not so bad. And the suction will hold it in place as well. So with that said and done, I'm going to drill some pocket holes and then finish all of them, and then we'll do some assembly. But because I'm running a shut vac all the time for this, tunes are a must. there we go. Yeah, kind of tedious, but you see what I mean here. I wanted a space because some of these are going to have dados running down the middle of them, so that's why I spaced the holes out. That's all the pieces that are going, they're going this way, but there's two that actually go this way, and that's in, you'll see those later, in the dividers that go between the small drawers on either side of the open cabinet side. So yeah, let's go ahead and assemble one or two of these, and then we'll move on from there. So this is how I'm going to put the frames together. These are if you saw my video when I rebuilt the shop, I talked a bit about these back-to-back clamps. Now they clamp onto the workbench here and here. Then they have a clamping surface on top for holding your workpiece. I have set a piece of plywood on the end of the bench to give me a 90-degree datum. I clamp the workpiece in here. Now, way it is, it's dry fit. And then using my little pointy inside-outside measuring thingy for a tape measure, I measured from corner to corner, here and here, and I found that it's basically perfectly square within way less than a 16, one needle width, or line width on the tape measure. So the next trick is to unclamp this, put some glue on each joint, and then pocket hole screw it together with the correct pocket hole screws. And in this case, the orange ones, because this is an Armoire, and they are color-coded. Let's make one up. So I got my glue. Now the screws, like I said, well, they're kind of a beige-ish yellow, whatever. It says yellow on the box. Softwoods and plywoods, they do mark their screws. I mean, so does Craig to the point. For softwoods and hardwoods, and the softwoods, you can't see in camera, I don't think. No, it's coarser thread. What's that doing in there? That's in the wrong place. So the softwoods and plywoods are coarser thread, and of course the ones for harder woods are a finer thread. So let's unclamp this. Make sure you get the right one. Okay, scoot it out of the way a little bit. Oops, come on. There we go. Now I'm going to tip this up, and I'm going to put glue on the stiles. First thing I want to do, though, is put this back together just a little bit, make a measurement, and make a mark. This is where this has to go. It's 24.5 inches from either side, and there we go. So that's where that needs to go. These ones you line up with just the end of the 52-inch piece. This has a little bow in it too, so I got to deal with that. Don't need a lot of glue between this and because it's not going to have a load on it. Just a little bit of glue. Because it's just going to sit in the cabinet, and it's not going to have a physical up, sideways, up, down, or sideways load. So let's put this up against there. This one on my mark, right there. This one up there. Oops. And get that out of the way. Bring this down. And I'm going to move that. That. Okay, that's flush there. That's flush there. Clamp that one down. Yep, that's flush. Clamp that one down. Oops. I made a boo-boo. Boo-boo. Gotta go that way. There we go. Okay, that's flush there, there, and there. That's flush there. Bring this up. Clamp that in place. This is where it needs to be in relation to the center. Bring that up tight and give it a clamp. All right. I think that's good enough. Yep. Yep. A little change here. This can always be a little finicky. There we go. All right, so glued in place. Give it a little. Nice and smooth. And double check my corner to corner. 46 and a half. So now, put some pocket hole screws in. And I'm not really grinking them, I'm just snugging them down, making them tight, that's all. After a few years, you get a feel for the trigger on the screw gun. Oopsie. Geez, what's wrong with this? Oh, okay. A little paint in the screw hole. It's tight. I developed this feel for drilling stuff. Building boats using bronze screws and a screw gun. Yeah, that's challenging. Because when you're using bronze screws and a screw gun, you have a good opportunity to wring the head right off it. So you get a feel for when it's coming to a stop and when the torque is building up and just when to stop pushing the trigger. Also, don't use 18-volt drills when you do this. Use 12-volt drills. Don't ask me how I know that. Okay, I have a frame. Now, because it has pocket hole screws and it is glued, I can unclamp it. And show you a finished frame. This may be one that's going to get a dado, I don't know. So that is how all the rest of the frames are going to go together. I'll be using this jig setup to do it. I'm going to end this video here because this is just a lot of tedious assembly. Not really tedious, it's woodworking. But it can be tedious assembly. So once they're all assembled, we'll put them aside. The next episode, I'm probably going to go down to Dennis's at Maryland Select Hardwoods and pick out the cherry for the top and bottom sides. They're going to be one piece, and then I'm going to cross cut them so that the grain follows from the top all the way down to the floor. Well, to the legs anyway. So until next time, my good friends, make great things out of wood.